The Supreme Leader. Inside Kim Jong Un's North Korea, read and published by Mr. Books. Behind the impenetrable borders of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea exists a reality that defies both comprehension and imagination. North Korea is not merely a country isolated by choice and circumstance. It is a carefully stage-managed world held in thrall by the absolute power of one man, Kim Jong Un. Since ascending to the apex of power upon the death of his father, Kim Jong-il, in 2011, Kim Jong Un has transformed the state from the inside out. What lies behind the spectacle of military parades, relentless propaganda, and tales of cultish loyalty is a society engineered to ensure the unwavering supremacy of the leader. This book peels back the layers of secrecy and fear to reveal the remarkable architecture of control, loyalty, and repression in North Korea. Each chapter explores a distinct facet of this enigmatic regime, charting the rise of Kim Jong Un as he consolidated his position through cunning and ruthless measures. The omnipresent cult of personality that demands worship from millions, and the ever-watchful mechanisms of surveillance that render privacy impossible. Most crucially, it examines how Kim Jong Un wields state power as both shield and sword, alternately isolating his citizens and projecting aggression abroad from forbidding propaganda machines with their relentless barrage of state-sanctioned narratives to the tightly wound circles of military power and elite privilege. This book endeavors to map the labyrinthine structure beneath the surface. We will enter a world where television, newspapers, and even whispers among friends are subject to scrutiny, where military parades are not just national spectacles, but ominous reminders of strength, where state-sponsored delusion blurs the lines between truth and myth. Beyond North Korea's borders, the Kim regime juggles diplomacy, brinkmanship, and nuclear ambitions with practiced deceit, crafting an image of invincibility while balancing on the edge of economic collapse. With insights drawn from defectors, satellite imagery, and leaked intelligence, this account lays bare how the regime perpetuates itself, and, more importantly, how it may one day unravel. As you journey through these chapters, you will confront not only the machinery of authoritarianism and the hearts of those entangled within it, but also the ever-looming question: what comes next for Kim Jong-un's North Korea and for the world that watches, often helplessly, from beyond the barbed wire fence? Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button to support the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an audiobook that could change your life. Now, let's begin. Enjoy. Chapter 1. The Rise of the Supreme Leader. The ascension of Kim Jong-un to the apex of power in North Korea was neither guaranteed nor straightforward. Born in 1984, Kim Jong-un's early years were shrouded in secrecy, and his very existence was kept hidden even by most of North Korea's elite. Unlike his father, Kim Jong-il, who was meticulously groomed for succession over decades, Kim Jong-un was thrust into the public eye late and had little time to cultivate the cult of personality, now synonymous with his rule. The death of Kim Jong-il in December 2011 left North Korea teetering on the edge of uncertainty. The world watched closely, speculating whether the fragile regime would collapse, spark chaos, or burst onto the international stage with renewed aggression. Instead, the transition unfolded with surprising efficiency and violence. Kim Jong-un was rapidly declared the great successor, and his legitimacy was built on a bloodline alone. To fully appreciate Kim Jong-un's rise, one must first understand the peculiar brand of monarchy practiced by the Kim family. In a nation where Marxism-Leninism ostensibly guides policy, the dynasty has cleverly fused communist doctrine with Confucian filial reverence, creating an ideological foundation for hereditary rule. For decades, the father-son transfer of power from Kim Il-sung to Kim Jong-il, and then to Kim Jong-un, has been framed as the natural extension of revolutionary leadership. This mythology, rammed home through every organ of propaganda, is the bedrock upon which Kim Jong Un's reign stands. Kim Jong-il's declining health catalyzed the grooming of his youngest son. Western intelligence speculated about various sons and relatives, but internally, the selection process was clandestine, deliberate, and beset with purges. Kim Jong-un's formative years in Switzerland have been subject to much speculation. While they imbued him with exposure to the West, they also instilled a sense of isolation. Upon his return to North Korea, he was placed under the careful tutelage of senior officials loyal to the family. In the frantic months following Kim Jong-il's demise, Kim Jong-un orchestrated a consolidation of power that stunned observers. He moved swiftly to eliminate rivals, including his own uncle Jang Song-thaek, once deemed the regime's second most powerful figure. Jang's brutal execution in 2013 sent shockwaves through the elite, reaffirming Kim's ruthlessness and decisiveness. Other influential figures, including top military leaders, either disappeared or were demoted, ensuring that no alternative centers of power could emerge. Parallel to these purges, Kim Jong-un embarked on a charm offensive. He appeared in public, smiling and gesticulating like his grandfather Kim Il-sung, resembling him in both appearance and temperament. Unlike his reclusive father, Kim Jong-un adopted a proactive leadership style, visiting factories, launching construction projects, and making highly publicized gestures of concern for the people's welfare, even as he oversaw a dramatic escalation in repression. This duality, merging brutality with benevolence, became Kim's hallmark. Underneath the facade of youthful energy and charisma lurked an acute awareness of the stakes. He understood that only absolute control could keep the regime afloat. By leveraging his family's legacy and mixing it with calculated spectacle, Kim Jong-un solidified his position within months, quelling both internal dissent and external skepticism. The supreme leader's early years marked the beginning of a new, more unpredictable era for North Korea. No longer content to be a hermit, Kim Jong-un signaled a willingness to confront the world and to drag his beleaguered country with him, however reluctantly. His meteoric rise, punctuated by bloodshed and showmanship, laid the foundation for the modern North Korean state as we now recognize it. A nation ruled by fear, myth, and a single, unassailable figurehead. Chapter 2. The Cult of Personality. Among Kim Jong-un's most potent tools is the meticulously crafted cult of personality that envelopes him. Borrowing heavily from the legacies of his father and grandfather, he has transformed himself from an unknown successor to the living embodiment of the North Korean state. The machinery of this cult is omnipresent, from grand monuments and ubiquitous portraits to stirring anthems and relentless state media glorification. The origins of this cult predate Kim Jong-un. Kim Il-sung, the founding father, was deified. In propaganda as the eternal president, his life retold as one of revolutionary valor and benevolent leadership. This narrative intensified under Kim Jong-il, who was elevated to the status of infallible genius. For North Koreans, the leaders are not merely political figures. They are semi-divine, omnipotent protectors whose wisdom and courage are beyond question. Kim Jong-un inherited this legacy upon his father's death, but faced the daunting task of establishing his own legitimacy. He started with carefully orchestrated public appearances, many echoing scenes from Kim Il-sung's heyday, touring collective farms, guiding workers, and expressing paternal concern. The regime flooded the nation with imagery of Kim Jong-un, but with a twist. He was portrayed as both a youthful innovator and a faithful steward of his ancestors. Propaganda campaigns highlighted his supposed academic brilliance, martial prowess, and compassionate leadership. Books, songs, and artworks celebrating his achievements proliferated as every aspect of public life became a canvas for hagiography. Schools taught children to sing odes to the supreme leader, while workplace meetings opened with vows of devotion. But the cult extends far beyond positive storytelling. It is enforced through surveillance, public displays of loyalty, and a constant undercurrent of fear. Citizens are required to wear badges with the likenesses of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il on their chests, a daily reminder of the ever-watchful eye of authority. Ritualized events, such as choreographed mass games and veneration in statues, reinforce the population's subordination to the Kim family. For the elite, displays of allegiance are even more pronounced. Officials compete to demonstrate their fealty, aware that any perceived wavering could spell disaster. This culture of outward adulation creates an atmosphere of suffocating conformity, but also facilitates Kim Jong-un's personal rule. Dissent is not merely dangerous, it is heresy. Foreign observers often struggle to grasp the psychological depth of the cult of personality. To compare it to typical authoritarianism is to misunderstand its reach. North Korea's regime has succeeded in intertwining national identity and familial devotion with the persona of Kim Jong-un. Any hint of dissatisfaction is automatically framed as a betrayal of both country and family, a message drilled into citizens from birth. Kim Jong-un has also adapted the cult to new realities. He embodies the image of the strong, modern leader, but he also signals a break from the past. Appearing in Western-style dress, riding roller coasters with his wife, mingling with world leaders, these carefully curated moments contrast with the more staid approach of his predecessors. Yet the critical core remains. All glory flows from the Kim family. In this way, the cult of personality under Kim Jong-un is both a shield and a sword. It shields him from challenges to his authority and facilitates absolute command, but it also requires constant vigilance and innovation to maintain. A myth must always be fed, lest cracks appear in the foundation. For North Korea, the face of Kim Jong-un is more than an image. It is the heartbeat of a system that brooks no deviation. Chapter 3. Power Structures and the Elite. Beneath North Korea's outward uniformity lies a labyrinthine network of power, tightly but delicately balanced by the supreme leader. Kim Jong-un presides over a system defined by overlapping hierarchies and hidden rivalries, where status and survival are perpetually in flux. At the apex sits the Workers' Party of Korea, WPK, a singular political entity that governs every facet of life. Through the party's Central Committee, Politburo, and Secretariat, Kim Jong-un exerts direct and indirect control over all policymaking. Yet the party is only one axis of power. The military, termed the Korean People's Army, KPA, commands vast resources and personnel. Its military-first Songon policy, championed by Kim Jong-il, elevated the KPA status, weaving it into the regime's essential fabric. Yet Kim Jong-un has rebalanced these structures. Early in his reign, he initiated sweeping changes, removing senior generals, reshaping the Central Military Commission, and asserting party oversight over the armed forces. Some observers viewed these moves as a rollback of Songun, restoring preeminence to the party and curtailing the military's independent influence. In truth, Kim was reducing potential threats while consolidating his networks of loyalty. The third pillar of power is the internal security apparatus, most notably the Ministry of State Security and the Ministry of People's Security. These organs operate with vast, unchecked authority, monitoring, detaining, and eliminating anyone deemed a threat. For average citizens, even a careless remark can invite disaster. The secret police's reach is so pervasive that trust outside one's immediate family is virtually impossible. For North Korea's elite, life is equally perilous. The notion of a privileged upper class, dominated by high-ranking officials and military leaders, is real. But it is also precarious. Privileges depend on perceived loyalty and utility to Kim Jong Un. Frequent purges serve as grisly reminders that no one is indispensable. Some of the regime's most prominent figures have vanished overnight, erased from the public record as if they never existed. Maintaining control over this apparatus requires constant vigilance. Kim Jong Un cultivates overlapping fiefdoms. No single institution or individual can amass unchecked power. He employs divide and rule tactics, pitting factions against one another and promoting internal suspicion, even among family members. Trust is a rare commodity, as the fate of Jang Song-fek so brutally demonstrated. Yet, there are loyalty rewards. The elite enjoy privileges unimaginable to ordinary citizens. Access to luxury goods, superior health care and education, and the right to reside in Pyongyang, a gleaming, well-supplied metropolis strictly off-limits to most North Koreans. Ruling family and their inner circle live in a world insulated from the hardship and deprivation found elsewhere. However, this privilege comes with strings attached. The children of top officials are dispatched abroad for schooling, but always under careful watch. Family members of purged officials are often punished as well, underscoring the inescapable reach of the regime. The power structure is thus a paradox, dynamic yet brittle, centralized yet riddled with paranoia. Absolute loyalty to Kim Jong Un is the only true path to survival, but that very structure breeds the seeds of instability. The supreme leader's challenge is not merely to dominate, but to continually reinvent the mechanisms that keep the elite in check, ensuring the system's durability, at least for as long as his grip remains unchallenged. Chapter 4. Life under surveillance. To be a citizen of North Korea is to be watched, judged, and controlled from cradle to grave. The regime's sprawling surveillance state is perhaps its most effective means of perpetuating its rule. An invisible web of informants, cameras, and institutionalized suspicion woven meticulously into daily life. Surveillance begins at birth. Every North Korean is placed in the Songbun system, a rigid social classification based on family background and loyalty to the regime. One Songbun determines everything: housing, education, employment, and even access to food. Those classified as politically wavering or hostile are watched more closely than those of core or loyal backgrounds. This three-tiered hierarchy instills a permanent sense of insecurity and competition. Education further entrenches surveillance. From the earliest grades, children are instructed in the art of self-criticism, reciting the regime's slogans and identifying enemies within their communities. School meetings involve collective criticism, where individuals must confess faults and report those of others. Not to participate is to invite suspicion. The practice continues into adulthood, reinforcing conformity and curbing dissent. The core of the surveillance state, however, is its extensive network of informants. Each neighborhood has a block warden, usually an older woman, tasked with monitoring residents' activities, visitors, and even the contents of their trash. Ordinary citizens live in fear of betrayal. An unwelcome curiosity about foreign radio, a whispered complaint, or a surreptitious gathering can all result in denunciation. Workplaces, too, serve as extensions of the state's eyes and ears. In Minmin, people's groups convene daily for mandatory political education and group self-criticism. Officers from the Ministry of State Security conduct periodic checks, often arbitrarily, ensuring that ideological discipline remains absolute. Documents must always be in order, and any unexplained absence is grounds for interrogation. Technology has begun to reshape this apparatus. While North Korea remains technologically isolated, cell phones and even limited internet networks are tightly controlled. All calls and messages are subject to monitoring. Attempts to access foreign information can be met with harsh punishment. Meanwhile, secret police scour the countryside for illegal satellite dishes or smuggled USB sticks, knowing that even the smallest leak of outside knowledge undermines the regime's narrative control. Social life is stifled by this omnipresent scrutiny. Friendships and family bonds are fraught with suspicion. Trust is a rare luxury. Religious practice, unauthorized gatherings, and even innocent jokes carry the risk of denunciation. The very language people use laden with ritual praise for the supreme leader and careful avoidance of forbiddance terms betrays a population conditioned for self-censorship. Despite these hardships, small acts of defiance persist. Markets, though, regulated and often corrupt, serve as hotbeds for rumor and illicit information. Some bribe local officials or cultivate carefully managed networks of trust. The regime responds with periodic crackdowns, extracting loyalty through fear and the promise of relative comfort for those who comply. The surveillance state is thus both a tool of oppression and a reflection of the regime's fundamental insecurity. As technology slowly alters the contours of control, the tension between stability and change intensifies. For Kim Jong Un, maintaining the surveillance apparatus is essential a bulwark against the very real specter of dissent, both real and imagined. For ordinary North Koreans, their lives remain a performance, played on a stage where every audience member might also be a secret judge. Chapter 5. The Machinery of Propaganda. North Korea's regime is synonymous with secrecy and strict control, but nowhere is its sophisticated apparatus more evident than in its state-run propaganda machine. Propaganda is not merely a tool for indoctrination in this hermit kingdom. It is a fundamental pillar underpinning the regime's very existence. The machinery of propaganda in Kim Jong Un's North Korea is an intricate, evolving beast, relentless in its reach, all-consuming in its narrative, and omnipresent in daily life. From the moment a North Korean child learns to read, they are fed stories of Kim Il-sung's battlefield heroics, Kim Jong-il's genius, and Kim Jong-un's benevolence. Textbooks in schools are heavy with tales, extolling the virtues of the Kim dynasty, seamlessly merging history, mythology, and party doctrine. Students recite odes to the leader and learn the correct way to think. Critical thought is replaced by absolute loyalty. The country's print media, radio, and television are strictly controlled by the Korean Central News Agency, KCNA, and its many subsidiaries. There is no room for dissent or alternate views. News is curated, fabricated, and broadcast with one unwavering goal: glorifying the supreme leader and fortifying the image of North Korea as a proud, unassailable nation, under siege from foreign enemies. Daily broadcasts detail Kim Jong-un's latest achievements, weaving narratives of compassion and strength that reinforce his standing as the nation's guardian. Even the weather report sometimes thanks the leader for favorable conditions or blames enemies for disasters. Across the country, giant murals and ubiquitous statues depict the Kims as godlike figures. Slogans emblazoned in red grace every public space, urging eternal loyalty. In the capital, Pyongyang, a sense of order and prosperity dominates, maintained not only by actual surveillance, but by psychological pressure. Citizens feel compelled to report even minor infractions of the ideological norm, fearful of retribution that can affect entire families. Mass games enormous. Stadium spectacles are perhaps the most visible manifestation of propaganda. Tens of thousands of children perform intricate displays, forming mosaics that depict the Kims and the strength of the nation. These are not merely for entertainment, but for indoctrination, instilling collective pride and obedience. In recent years, the regime has recognized the insidious threat posed by outside information. With the rise of cheap radios, USB sticks, and cell phones smuggled from China, the government has cracked down with new vigor. Severe penalties, including execution, have been meted out for those caught consuming South Korean dramas or foreign news. The notorious 3 generations of punishment rule means that the actions of one can doom their entire family. Yet the regime's propaganda is not static. It evolves. Under Kim Jong Un, there has been a greater focus on depicting him as a modern, approachable leader smiling among children, riding roller coasters and inspecting factories. The goal remains unchanged: to ensure that every mind is occupied by thoughts of loyalty, every heart filled with fear and love for the supreme leader. Through ceaseless storytelling, symbolic spectacle, and the ever-present shadow of punishment, the machinery of propaganda in North Korea sustains a society where reality itself is shaped by the will of one man. Those who resist are made invisible. Those who comply become part of the performance, keeping the myth alive for another day. Chapter 6. North Korea's Military Ambitions. North Korea's identity is forged in the crucible of its military might. No other regime in modern history has placed such emphasis on martial strength, both real and imagined. The world has become accustomed to images of goose-stepping soldiers, intercontinental ballistic missiles rumbling through the heart of Pyongyang, and Kim Jong-un watching missile launches with apparent satisfaction. But the country's military ambitions are more than spectacle. They are rooted in the regime's survival strategy. Under Kim Jong-un, North Korea has pursued an explicit doctrine known as Byung-jin, which seeks to advance both economic development and nuclear capability in tandem. In practice, however, the scales have tipped heavily in favor of the military. The regime believes, with ample cause, that its survival depends not only on internal control, but on the credible threat of force. The Korean People's Army, KPA, one of the largest standing armies in the world, is not only a deterrent against foreign intervention, but also an omnipresent institution within society. Compulsory military service is the norm, often extending for a decade or more. Service is not merely a duty, it is a proving ground for loyalty and a school of ideological reinforcement. Soldiers are taught that the United States and South Korea are existential enemies plotting the country's destruction. Large portions of the population are involved in civil defense, ensuring a militarized mindset pervades every facet of daily life. The centerpiece of North Korea's military ambitions is its nuclear program. Decades in the making, it has become the regime's greatest bargaining chip. Despite international condemnation, sanctions, and periodic negotiations, Kim Jong-un has continued to develop and test nuclear weapons. These efforts have included missile tests that demonstrate growing sophistication, capable of threatening not only regional powers, but the continental United States. The nuclear program provides both practical and psychological benefits for the regime. Practically, it deters foreign attack and strengthens the state's negotiating position. Psychologically, it fosters a sense of pride and invincibility. North Korea is portrayed as a small but mighty nation defying the world. Propaganda images of missiles and soldiers are meant not just for foreigners, but to reassure citizens that their leader is keeping them safe. Yet, the regime's military ambitions extend beyond mere defense. Kim Jong-un has invested heavily in asymmetric capabilities, cyber warfare, espionage, and clandestine operations in foreign countries. The cyber unit, famously known as Bureau 121, has been linked to sophisticated attacks ranging from bank theft to ransomware campaigns, generating both income and disruption abroad. The cost of this relentless focus on the military is borne by the people. Resources that could be used to improve agriculture or healthcare are funneled into military research. Periodic famines and malnutrition persist alongside gleaming missile displays. The regime justifies austerity as a necessary sacrifice for national security. Paradoxically, The regime's military ambitions both sustain it and threaten its downfall. Should there be even a hint of weakness, internal or external, the myth of invincibility could shatter. The challenge for Kim Jong Un is to maintain the image of perpetual strength, balancing the pursuit of formidable weaponry with the ever-present risk of economic collapse or military miscalculation. In the eyes of the regime, security is non-negotiable, and every missile test is a message, not just to the world, but to its people. A supreme leader will keep North Korea strong, no matter the cost. Chapter 7. Diplomacy, Deception, and Nuclear Games. North Korea's foreign affairs are a bewildering dance of threats, entreaties, and shifting alliances. To outsiders, the regime's behavior may seem erratic and unpredictable. In reality, it is the calculated strategy of a government intent on survival, prestige, and leverage. At the center of this web stands Kim Jong Un, a supreme leader who has surprised the world both by his willingness to meet foreign leaders and his refusal to yield on core demands. Diplomacy under Kim Jong Un is transactional by nature. The regime uses talks and symmetry as both shields and sword shields against sanctions and hostile alliances, and swords to extract concessions or buy time. This was exemplified most dramatically in the series of summits with then U.S. President Donald Trump. The world watched transfixed as the two leaders exchanged insults, then sat down in Singapore for a historic handshake. For many, this symbolized the possibility of change. For North Korea, it was an opportunity to enhance its legitimacy and divide its adversaries. Behind the scenes, North Korea's approach to diplomacy is an exercise in deception. Promises are made, broken, and remade with little regard for consistency. Nuclear brinkmanship is the most potent bargaining tool, a cycle of escalation, negotiation, and backsliding that ensures perpetual relevance. The regime has mastered the art of crossing red lines, then offering a pause for dialogue, demanding economic aid or eased sanctions in return for halting, but not eliminating, its nuclear activities. The regime is equally adept at playing regional powers against each other. China remains its main patron, and, though increasingly frustrated by Pyongyang's provocations, provides essential economic lifelines. Russia, too, has cultivated ties, particularly as sanctions have limited North Korea's options globally. At the same time, periods of tension with South Korea oscillate between abject belligerence, shelling islands, threatening sea of fire, retaliation, and sudden charm offensives, such as the participation in the 2018 Winter Olympics. Internationally, North Korea's willingness to sell weapons and military know-how to rogue states and non-state actors provides another lever for influence and hard currency. In United Nations circles, its diplomats are skilled at stonewalling and extracting incremental gains, often supporting one crisis with threats to exacerbate another. Beneath it all lurks the nuclear game. Kim Jong Un has repeatedly affirmed North Korea's status as a responsible nuclear power. What this means, however, is unclear. Denuclearization, as defined by Pyongyang, is conditional on the withdrawal of all perceived U.S. threats, not the elimination of its arsenal. The world remains wary, yet captivated, by the regime's ability to manipulate crises to its advantage. Each diplomatic overture is choreographed to ensure maximum gain at minimum risk, backed always by the unspoken threat of catastrophe. While talks periodically flare up, fundamental issues remain unresolved. Ultimately, diplomacy for North Korea is neither a means nor an end. It is part of the ongoing performance, a high-wire act played out against a backdrop of nuclear fire, where deception is both shield and spear. Through this game, Kim Jong Un has ensured his regime's survival, kept adversaries guessing, and maintained the delicate balance at the heart of the world's most dangerous stalemate. Chapter 8. An Uncertain Future. If the past is prologue, the future of North Korea under Kim Jong Un remains the world's most inscrutable enigma. The supreme leader has thus far proved adept at maintaining control, crushing dissent, balancing the needs of the elite and the military, and keeping the population shrouded in propaganda and fear. Yet beneath the surface, cracks are beginning to show. The forces of history, technology, and human yearning for freedom cannot be suppressed forever. Internally, the regime faces mounting challenges. The economy, battered by sanctions and mismanagement, teeters on the brink of collapse. Agricultural failures, persistent food shortages, and the impact of global pandemics have increased pressure on ordinary North Koreans. While the elite in Pyongyang enjoy relative prosperity, the gap between rich and poor is stark, fueling quiet resentment. Defectors report rising cynicism among youth, growing black markets, and a hunger for outside information. Smuggled USB drives and illegal cell phones are eroding the airtight seal around the country. The leadership's grip remains formidable, but not unbreakable. Kim Jong-un's own health scares have prompted speculation about succession and the stability of the regime. The question of what happens if the supreme leader is incapacitated or overthrown haunts analysts. Will the military step in? Will rival factions emerge? Will civil unrest erupt? Or will chaos invite intervention from neighboring powers? Externally, North Korea's position is equally precarious. Its nuclear arsenal buys time, not security. Sanctions continue to bite, lessening the regime's ability to finance its ambitions. While China and Russia offer lifelines, patience wears thin with each provocation. Every missile test risks global backlash. Every act of diplomacy is hedged with doubt. There is also the question of change. Could internal reform emerge, initiated by Kim himself, or forced by circumstances? There are faint echoes of glasnost and perestroika, whispers among academics and the elite of a different path. Yet the risks terrify the leadership. The ghosts of the Arab Spring and the Soviet collapse loom large. What is certain is that the status quo is unsustainable. The barriers of fear and ignorance are cracking with each new bite of smuggled information. Every whispered story of life in the outside world. Someday, whether through upheaval, negotiation, or collapse, North Korea will be forced to confront the world it has long kept at bay. In the end, the fate of Kim Jong-un's North Korea rests on a knife's edge. A machinery of control is formidable, but history is merciless. As the world waits, the curtain has not yet fallen on the supreme leader's stage. The next act may be the most tumultuous of all. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button to support the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an audiobook that could change your life. Now, let's begin. Enjoy.